Welcome back. Today, once again, I'm going to try to solve some chess puzzles on chess.com. If you saw my last puzzle solving video, you'll remember that not only did I have the glitch where the site doesn't count the points for the first puzzle, but on the last puzzle, I was just trying to draw an arrow and accidentally moved a piece, which I wasn't intending to move, and failed that one. So I ended up with a lower rating than I began with. Hopefully today that won't happen, because not only is that a little embarrassing to do on video, but it's not good for my chess development. But we are going to click on puzzles, and you can see my rating is 2063. I don't have any confidence that chess.com has fixed the glitch, so what's probably going to happen here, if I solve this, it'll go up to 2068, but then on the next puzzle, when those points are added, it won't go any higher, and it'll be this puzzle that wasn't counted. But anyway, let's do our best. This is an endgame puzzle. We don't have to consider a lot of it. For example, those 3 pawns can't move at all, so I don't have to consider them for the first move. I do have to consider these other 3 pawns and my king. I'm going to guess that it's not a king move. And the reason is my king can't move forward, and of course it can't move to where my own pawns are, so my king could only move away from this pawn. And I'm pretty sure if I do that, their king will come toward that pawn, and then I'm starting to run out of options. Especially if I move to one of those 2, but then I would have to move back here to defend it, and that just wastes time, right? So it's one of these 3 pawn moves. Just instinctively, which is how we see positions in a lot of cases, we just see a check or whatever. There's no instinct here telling me that one of those is better. So it's something I'm going to have to figure out. Let's just see what happens. What does my opponent do if I play a6, if I push the a pawn? And what does that accomplish? One thing it accomplishes is it gets this pawn 1 square closer to promotion. Of course, I would have preferred to move it 2 spaces, but I can't. So I can move it 1 space. That doesn't cut off that square from the king, b5, because my other pawn was already cutting off b5 from the king. It doesn't force the king back, it's not a check, so the only thing that accomplishes is getting that pawn 1 square to promotion, and possibly, if this is one of those zugzwang positions, I think that's the word, then the opponent won't have a good move. I guess it could accomplish that, but in that case, I think the opponent could just push their other pawn, or that one. I don't know which one they would choose, but I'm pretty sure they would choose one of those 2 pawns. I don't know. But then if they did that, like if I played here and they pushed their b pawn, then what do? I don't want to push my d pawn because then they get a protected passed pawn. Actually, it wouldn't be protected because I would take first, but then they would take with their other pawn and they would have a passed pawn. It just wouldn't be protected. It would be kind of by itself. And I would have to go toward it. They would go toward it and I would go toward it, and then they could protect it. And then they would have 2 pawns over here facing this one. So yeah, I don't think it's pushing that one. That one doesn't accomplish anything. What does pressing my c pawn to c5 accomplish? For one thing, it doesn't any longer protect b5, because I try to remember when you move a piece, it's not where it was anymore, which seems obvious and an overstatement of the completely obvious, but a lot of us forget that in chess. We think this square's protected. What happens if I move this pawn? But that square's not protected if we move this pawn. So that's one thing it would accomplish. It would allow a king move. I don't know if that's what they would play, but it would allow that. What's not allowed now. It would also allow either one of those pawn moves. So if I played c5 and they played b4, then do I take it? And then they take back, or do they take back with the pawn? This one's really complicated. But I assume the goal here is to create a passed pawn of my own. Well, before I assume that, let's back up. What is the point in an endgame puzzle? Oh, I just got a challenge for a blitz game. Please do not send me challenges for blitz games. I'm going to accept that challenge. What is it called? Decline. I'm going to decline that challenge. Thank you, ma'am or sir. That was distracting. By the way, this is as good a time as any to mention, since I'm already distracted and interrupted. If you'd like to send me a challenge, I would love to play you a game. But number 1, make sure it's a daily game, because I might not have time right now to play a 10 or 20 minute game against you, or even a 5-minute game, or a 3-minute game, as the case was here, because I'm in the middle of something else. But if you send me a challenge for a daily game, I can click yes, and then I can make my move when I'm done with this. Also, make sure it's unrated. That's for 2 reasons. 1, you might be a lot better than me, and then that's the case for some of you, and you would just crush me and I would lose rating points for no reason, and maybe not even learn anything. Number 2, I might be better than you, and then you would lose rating points for nothing, and you might not learn anything, and I might not learn anything. Yeah, if you want to send me a challenge, that's great. Make sure it's unrated. Make sure it's a daily game. You can pick the number of days. I'm fine. 1 day, 3 days, 7 days, whatever the choices are. Back to this puzzle. In a game, when you're down to a king and pawns, what is the goal? Obviously, the goal is to win, but the goal with the pawns is one is to create a passed pawn of your own, to shepherd that pawn down for promotion. Another is to prevent the opponent from doing the same. And a third, which may be the case here, I haven't looked at it long enough, I guess, the king might be trapped, but it doesn't look like it. I don't have a B pawn. I think if I had a B pawn, their king might be getting close to being trapped. But not really. I mean, it has places to go, right? For example, if I play C5 first to cut that off from their king still has a square it can go to, and it can move this pawn forward. And I don't have a pawn that can check their king anyway, so I don't think it's that. But what is it? Am I able to get a passed pawn here? I don't think I can. Well, I've already spent too much time on this puzzle, including the interruption, but I'm leaning toward this just because I don't know. You know what? I do know. I don't think they would push this forward. I think they would put their king over first and then push that forward. And if I tried to check them, could just step back. That gets really complicated. I'm just, you know what I'm saying? They have choices if I do that. They have that choice. They have these choices. Or in that matter, they have this choice. You know what I'm saying? If I play C5, they have several choices. The only choice that I think works out good for me is if they push that pawn, then I get my king here, and if they take. And even then, I don't know if that's great for me, because even though I can take here with my king, they go for my pawn, and then I take their next pawn, and then they start pushing this one forward, and I can't get close to it. I mean, I can get next to it, but then they push it next to their king, and I don't have a passed pawn yet. That's a lot of ifs. They don't have to do all that. It can't be D5, can it? I mean, my D pawn is the only one that has a clear path, except for that square, the square right in front of it. If they take with that pawn, then I create another D pawn for myself, and then they take that. And again, they've got a passed pawn. There's nothing in front of it. I'm going to have to bring my king to get in front of it, right? If these two pawns are gone and that one's gone and this pawn is here with nothing in front of it, wait, then I'll have nothing in front of my E pawn. So I could push my E pawn forward. And if they take it, I've got a passed pawn. Maybe it's the D pawn. I don't know. Let's try it. They did take. I was assuming they wouldn't take with their E pawn because then I would immediately have that. So I have to take back now, right? I don't, there's nothing else makes sense, right? It doesn't make sense to go like this and then they go past. I'm going to take back. They move their king. Okay. So does that mean I have a passed pawn or should I take now? If I move this, they come in closer and then I can't press it any further. But if I take here, they either have to take or I have a passed pawn that's further away from theirs. Actually, if they don't take me, I would take them to have a passed pawn way over there. Yeah, nothing else makes sense. I mean, that's not going to help, right? Okay, let's take the pawn. Okay, now I have a passed pawn way over here. Can their king catch it? No. So I should push that pawn then, right? I don't know what I don't think they can catch it, so I have to push that pawn. Oh, and it's still going, so I should push it again. Oh, I had to go one more square before the puzzle ran out. Okay. Is there a limit to how many moves the puzzle will go? I know I've had puzzles longer than this, but why did it stop there? Like, you'd think it would have stopped a move or two back, or go one more to at least let me promote. And yeah, see how it added 5 points there? I'm assuming that that's actually not going to count. But I have to go write this number down so I will be able to link to this puzzle. I'm actually going to write it on an actual notepad here because it seems faster. It was sitting right in front of me. 1249011. All right, got it. Let's go on to the next puzzle. Okay, and again, you see that it did count 5 points, but watch that number not go up if I get this one right. Okay, do I have any checks? No, I do not have any checks in this position. Okay, do I have any captures? The only capture that I see immediately is that pawn, or that pawn, which, I mean, I don't think I'm going to take that pawn. Surely not. Well, if I take that pawn, that's threatening their unprotected queen. But they could take me, and instead of taking back immediately, I could check them and then take back. I don't know if that's good or not. The only reason that I thought of that was because I was going through my checklist. I don't have any checks, so I'm looking for captures. That's a capture and a threat at the same time. And they don't have any checkmates lined up on me right now, so I don't have to worry about my first move not being a check. I mean, that seems like something I wouldn't find in a game, but I found here because I was using my checklist. Yeah, if they take here, I can check. Even if they come toward my knight, it's protected. Then I take their queen. Oh, but then they get that pawn and my rook's in danger. So maybe that's not it. What else? Well, these puzzles are getting so complex that I'm very, very tempted to just reset my puzzle rating and start back. But the problem with that, which is what I've already done a couple of times, when I get back to this level, the same thing's going to happen. And then I'll never progress past this. And I need to progress past this. But what else is there? I mean, none of these pawn moves do anything. Those pawns can't move. I don't think that does anything except just lose a bishop for a pawn. This rook can't go anywhere or threaten anything. And neither can that rook. That doesn't threaten anything, right? No, I mean, you know, all those squares are protected. The queen can barely move and doesn't want to move to some of the squares. And I found this by accident when I said, well, my only two captures are those two pawns. But that one does threaten their unprotected queen. I assume they would take mine. There's nothing else they would do there. They wouldn't take my knight. If they take my knight, then I know my second move is to take the queen. So I assume they'll take my queen. And then the only thing that makes sense after that is to check because, ooh, what about checking over here though? No. The difference is if I check over here, they can move next to it and then my knight's not protected. But if I take here and they take my queen and I check over here, my knight is protected. So if they do move next to it, then it is protected. But that's something else I need to consider. Which direction are they going to go? But they're going to go one of those directions and then I'll take their queen. But then I assume they're going to take this bishop. And then what do I do? I mean, take this pawn with their bishop is what I meant to say. That goes back to the choices of where the king moved is what I'll do next. If their king went to d8 or e7, this pawn's not there anymore. And my queen's not in front of my rook anymore. So I could take the bishop with check, protected by my knight, which is here on f6, and also protected by the pawn. The same thing, yeah, if the king went to e7 or e8, I would get an extra bishop. But what if the king went to f8 when it got out of check? Well, I could still take the bishop, and it would be free either way. And I would have let's see, what would I have lost? Well, what do I have gained? I would have gained a queen, a pawn, and a bishop. And they would have gained a queen and a pawn. I don't see anything else. That looks really complicated. Maybe I'll put this in the thumbnail, but let's try it. Okay, they did take my queen. Well, having gone this far, nothing else makes sense now except to check. Because if I take the queen first, they take my knight, and then I've lost more than I've gained. So it only makes sense to check. Okay, they moved over there, so now I take the queen. Now, I don't think anything else makes sense. And if they do take that pawn, I get to take the bishop with check because it's protected by my knight. Because I don't have any other checks right now, right? Okay. Oh, it stopped there. Oh, okay, and I was right about the points. You see how it says +5, but the score didn't go up. It's still 2068, which is what it was at the end of the last puzzles. And that means that the first one wasn't counted. This is a family-friendly channel, so I'm not going to say to chess.com what actually came to my mind. But let's go on to the next puzzle before I run out of time. Okay, the opponent has moved out of check. Do I have follow-up checks is the question. I mean, I do. All three of those are checks, but... Oh, and I have a follow-up check here too on f6, but that also doesn't seem good because all of those squares are protected, most of them in multiple ways. Those are the only two that only the king could capture. But I think those are my only checks. None of my rooks can check. Okay, well, it may not be a check then. How did my queen get in there anyway? I mean... Do I have a follow-up if I go to one of those squares and the king takes? I don't. My rook can't get down there to check again. So I don't have... I have another check. I just saw. I have this check. Okay. My h-pawn is missing. And I should go back and answer my own question first before I follow that out. But I don't think I have any follow-ups if the king takes back my queen there because my rook can't get down there. But as I was looking around, my eye was drawn here. And this rook actually can get there if it goes first. It can't get there if I check here and the king takes. Well, then that's not a check. But if it takes first and the king, I assume, will take because, oh yeah, because it can't move out of check because of my queen. So it would have to take. And then I have another one that can check. And the king has to go back where it was, and that's mate. Wait, is this a forced mate with the rook sacrifice? I'm not going to shout the rook thing that your other favorite chess YouTuber does, but I'm going to try it. It seems ridiculous, but I don't see anything else. I don't have any captures. My queen's kind of trapped. Not really fully trapped, but getting close there. Let's try it. Oh, please be right. Oh, it was right. Okay. And then this has to be right, and the king has to go to g7, and then it's mate in the corner with the queen. Oh, hopefully that's right too. It was, and then this is mate. Because my queen cuts off all of that. Okay, now I got my 5 points. And see how it says 2 in a row, even though there's 3 dots? There's 3 dots. You saw me. I've solved 3 puzzles in a row, and there's 3 dots on the screen. Yeah, blank, 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 chess.com. Oh, I'm so proud of myself that I got that. Okay. Well, on my end, I'm nearly 25 minutes, but that's because that first one took way too long. And it took me a little bit to get in the mood here. But I got excited about this one because I spotted it a little quicker than I normally would have. I'm going to click next. Okay, in this one they have checked me, protected by their rook back there on d1. I can take back, but then they would have a couple of choices. They could take my queen and check me, but then I would just get their rook. Or, when I took back, they could push this pawn and reveal a check with this bishop. Oh my. Or I could just move out of check. If I just move out of check, I think they're going to take my rook. And then from there, they'll be able to take this pawn with check. But if I take, I don't think they'll take back with their rook. I don't think that would be their best move. A human probably would, but then that would give me their rook. But then they could check again. And then I would get in front of that pawn, and their bishop and pawn would kind of be stuck there. And then I would eventually take it with my knight. So I think they would push this pawn. If I take with my queen, they push this pawn. That's check, and then I lose my queen to a pawn. Ooh, that's tough. That's nasty. I don't know if a human would spot that pawn move, or if that's their best move. I'm guessing though, because that looks like their best move, because that's an attack on my queen, but I can't defend my queen because I'm in check. So I'd have to move out of check one way or the other, and then they take my queen and promote. And yeah, if I had moved my king up to f7, then I could take back with my rook here, but I would have lost my queen for a pawn. But wait, I would have just gotten their queen. Oh my. Wow, another weird thing I just noticed about this puzzle is look where my rook is. Why did I put it there? And how did it get there? It can't come... What's going on? This looks like a made-up puzzle? Like one of those puzzles that somebody designs to teach you a specific principle or something. But, I mean, who does that? But anyway, so that distracted me when I realized there's a rook on e6, and not in the endgame. It's just right here, not too far out of the opening. I've got 2 pieces that haven't moved yet. My opponent's got a piece that hasn't moved yet. And somehow I managed to put a rook on e6. And they've got their d-pawn all the way down here, and it moved over to the c file. Well, what this comes down to is I've got to get out of check, and there's only 2 ways to do that. There's either taking the queen or moving my king. If I move my king, they're not going to take the rook. They're going to take my queen because my queen's undefended. So that means I've got to take their queen, and then we'll see what happens next. It's probably going to be that pawn move, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Hopefully this is right. Oh, it was the pawn move. Well, this is interesting. Now we know if I move out of check, which I can, my king has 2 spots to move out of check. f8 and f7. Their rook or their pawn will take my queen. But that's okay because I just lost a queen. I mean, I just took their queen, so that would put us back at even. And I'm still, even without the queen here, I'm up a minor piece. So I don't know how bad it would be to just get out of check. Now, if I got out of check to f8 and they take here, well, then I'm in check again and I have to move, and then they get my other rook, and then I'm not up a minor piece anymore. And if I get out of check to f7 and they take here, they're threatening my rook, and if I take back, they promote. And if I don't, they take me. And if I just move out of the way, I think they can take this bishop with their rook. And even though I could take back, then there's very little stopping this pawn from promoting. And that's a pretty long sequence of events. Okay, so instead of getting out of check, which I don't think is it based on what we just said, what about blocking with the bishop? I can block the check with the bishop. I think the problem with that is that while their bishop and rook continue to stare at my bishop, they're going to take my queen with check. And I could take it back. But then they get my bishop too, I think. Wow. Okay, so what do I do then? I block with the queen? That seems ridiculous. Wait, I still have 2 pieces defending that square. If I take, my knight's still guarding the promotion square, and their rook could take, but I would take that too. Wait, is it blocking with the queen? Which is, again, we already said it's okay because I already took their queen. And even if they take my queen, I'm up a minor piece. Okay. Oh my. Well, I just went over 30 minutes here on my end. And is this only my 3rd puzzle? I don't remember. No, it's my 4th because I already solved 3, even though the site only counted 2. Okay, I'm going to block with my queen, which seems ridiculous, but okay. Well, I can't take it with my king because of their rook, and I can't move in front of it because of their pawn. And if I get out of check, they take my bishop, but I could take back with my knight. But then they bring their rook in there. So do I take the bishop first? I think I take the bishop first. Let's see. What do they... If I just get out of check... Again, I have two choices for getting out of check. They could take my bishop, or they could take my rook. The rook that I mentioned there at the beginning that somehow mysteriously shot over there for no reason, just to get in there on the light squares where the light squared bishop could come after it. Maybe that's why it's in there, because this is a made-up puzzle. It's in there to teach me what to do here. That won't happen if I take the bishop now. If I go over to f8, then the rooks... No, it's still not free because my bishop's guarding that square. But it's still, they're going up the exchange, which would be good for them, and they have a pawn very far advanced. And if they take my rook, I can't put my rook behind that pawn. So if I go to one of those two squares to get out of check, I think they're going to take my rook. And then I still have this problem with them coming down, assuming I took back, where they can help them promote their pawn there on d8. But if I take the bishop now, I don't think the pawn will promote because of my knight. And I still can't check them. I'm in check, so I have to get out of check one of three ways. Right? Those are the only three ways to get out. Okay, I'm going to take the bishop. Oh, it ended there. But what are they going to do next? They're not going to try to promote, right? And now I'm up 2 minor pieces. Well, I'm glad I figured it out, and I'm out of time here. I'm glad I got 15 points, even though I solved 20 points worth of puzzles. My rating is higher than it was when I started. And hopefully you got something out of this too. I feel like I got my chess brain exercised a little bit, although that last puzzle was, I don't know, it was a little too far out there in some ways, but in other ways it was just forcing. Like I felt like each one of those moves was, if I did anything else, it would be worse. And now that I look at it, I'm better. It seems obvious that I'm better now. I have 2 pieces guarding the promotion square. I can put the rook behind the passed pawn before they can protect it. But earlier on, they had their queen down there, the rook pointed, their bishop pointed at my king, the discover check with the pawn, it seemed bad, but each one of my moves looked like it was determined by anything else you do will be worse than that. So might as well do this, which I guess is one way to look at it. Also, perceptions change depending on mood and experience and whatnot. So as always, I do appreciate you spending your time here, and hopefully I'll see you next time.